You talking to me?
The Fantasy Footballers are pleased to bring in special guest Nando Fino from the Fantasy Sports Network. We have he's been in the biz for quite some time, so it's pretty awesome for us to get him on the show and get some hot takes for the weekend. What's going on, Nando?
Not much, man. How are you guys doing?
We are doing well. I was doing better last week when I was in our fantasy playoffs, and I'm now currently out, but I am surviving. So we want to help the listeners stay in their leagues, and we want to talk about the running back situation. We had some injuries. We had Thomas Rawls go down. We know that he's out. Jonathan Stewart went down with a foot sprain. We have to believe that he's going to get rested. So there's just situations all over for these fantasy playoff teams that they need running backs. Now, waivers may have run for some teams, but there's other teams that they haven't run yet. So we want to run through guys. And Yeldon, he's another guy who's possibly out. So we got Denard Robinson, Tim Hightower. Let's start there at the top because I think those are kind of the unanimous top two guys. Which one of those are you targeting?
For me, it's Hightower, just because we know he's going to get those carries. I don't think C.J. Spiller is really a threat. The Denard Robinson situation, I like him a lot. I like him better than Hightower. But the situation's it's weirdly fluid. If I had to do it today, it would be Hightower. If I found out tomorrow that Yeldon was going to be out for 3 weeks, it would be Robinson. Just because of the timing right now, though, it's got to be the guy who's coming off a 28-carry game, as opposed to the guy who might or might not play, depending on the injury status.
Absolutely. So let's throw in then the guys from Seattle. We got DeJuan Harris. We do have a situation with Bryce Brown, who was recently signed, and head coach Pete Carroll has said they're going to fight it out for the starting position. What do you make of that, of what's going on in Seattle?
Yeah, I don't know if you guys are the same way, but I was stunned. Like, for the last 3 weeks, I've been dumping like my wide receivers and backup tight ends, whatever, on my bench for handcuffs, and one of them was Fred Jackson. And I really thought Fred Jackson would just slide right in, and it didn't happen. So I'm putting them behind even like Fozzie Whitaker right now, because it seems like they're just going to kind of cannibalize each other, and it's going to be one of those Ronnie Hillman, C.J. Anderson mid-season situations where no one runs away with it. I like how he says we're not going to go with a two-back approach. Like the Pete Carroll quote was kind of like, we're going to have a competition to see who's a starter. But I don't know if that really kind of eliminates the 15 carry versus 8 carry for each guy kind of scenario.
The only problem I have with ignoring the situation myself is I keep seeing that Cleveland matchup on the schedule and just realizing that somebody's probably going to do something there. But I'm having a hard time prioritizing those guys right now without seeing practice reports and seeing which guy's going to be that lead dog.
If you look at it like, so those two might split. But if you got someone like a Fozzie Whitaker, who, if Jonathan Stewart's in that walking boot and he's out for a week, maybe two, Whitaker's going to get, let's say, 80 to 85% of the work there. Whereas it could be Bryce Brown getting 55, Fred Jackson getting 15, and then DeJuan Harris just kind of falling off if his yards per carry don't look great, or he's not cutting well, he's not blocking the quarterback well. It just seems like one could take off. It's conceivable, but it's tough.
And Russell Wilson might be the fill-in in some regard.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now getting over to the Fozzie Whitaker side, we're of the belief here. There's been some reports recently, and they came from preseason and on, that if something were to happen to Jonathan Stewart, it would actually be the rookie Cameron Artis-Payne as the guy that comes in. Do you think that Cameron Artis-Payne is going to be able to take that? I mean, you're saying Fozzie's going to get 85% of the workload there. Do you discount those reports on Cameron Artis-Payne or not think he's going to be involved?
Yeah, my guess is that they're 13-0. They got a veteran who's, I'm assuming, because Cameron Artis-Payne hasn't played nearly as much as Fozzie Whitaker, especially last week. I think it's going to be you go with a veteran who can block for Cam Newton, who can fit that role. Cameron Artis-Payne might be kind of like a Giants Andre Williams situation where he's green. Like maybe he's not good catching passes yet. Maybe he's not good blocking yet. And Fozzie Whitaker, if he only gives you 70% of what Jonathan Stewart was able to, it's better than Cameron Artis-Payne, who could just be a disaster and isn't ready to kind of take up that mantle. I think if this Carolina team was, 6-7 at this point, it'd be a different story. But right now, I think they're going to go with a veteran who kind of can fit in the role, do what he's got to do, and kind of help them tread water until Jonathan Stewart comes back.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. Now, one of the more trepidatious situations in fantasy at the running back position is the New England backfield pretty much any week. But if Blunt, they said he's on crutches today. If he's out, would you consider streaming Bolden in that position? Or do you think more carries would go to White? Or how do you see that situation breaking down? Because obviously you have a top offense and some opportunities on the goal line there. 16 carries for Bolden last week.
Yeah, I think that kind of speaks to Bolden taking that role, and he can catch passes too. Whereas James White, I don't think he's your typical rusher. Even Bolden's a big-ish kind of guy, like bigger than you would expect him to be.
He runs hard too.
He fits that blunt role a little better than I think James White does. And at this point, with the way things are going with the Patriots, if you trot White out there and he gets hurt, you've kind of eliminated the pass-catching back.
Right.
Bolden can go in there and he can run, and then if something goes awry, maybe you bring in Christian Michael or bring in Jonas, pick someone off another team's practice squad. But if you lose James White right now, you already lost Lewis, you lose White, you've kind of lost that role. So I think he does have value there, and they don't want to risk him running the ball hard.
So let's move on to the quarterback position, and we're going to talk the streamers, and there's also the people who they've lost Andy Dalton. He's gone. He cannot help their team anymore. So let's talk about potential replacements for the quarterback. Now we got Alex Smith in a matchup against Baltimore. We saw Alex Smith do very Alex Smith-like things, but there was last week. But there was some nasty weather in that game. Are you still confident buying into a guy like Smith, or would you rather go with a guy like Ryan Fitzpatrick, who is red hot, but he takes on Dallas, who's a bit of a tougher defense?
I think I would go with Fitzpatrick. I tend to lean more talent than matchup because weird things can happen in games. Alex Smith is you look at him, and I know he's prone to a 4-touchdown game or something, but 230-yard cap. If he's not hitting Macklin, I don't know who he's going to hit. Spencer Ware's out, so maybe that helps him a little bit because he'll throw more to Sharkhandrick West, I would guess. But if you just want to go to right to A.J. McCarron, for me, if you look at Blaine Gabbert, had some pretty good games. Blake Bortles had some pretty good games. A.J. McCarron isn't exactly, not a first-round pick, but he was a Heisman runner-up. He's got some talent. He's got the right attitude. He got to be ready coming in. I would put McCarron ahead of someone like Alex Smith.
Yeah,
too.
That's hot.
Yeah, I like
Nando,
it.
That's hot.
I like hearing it. That's
that's the hot take that you wanted.
That's my stream of the week right there. You're a smart man. So here's a question that I think a lot of playoff teams are really struggling with. They might have the alternative middle of the tier guy options on their team, like a Stafford or a Bortles or someone that is not. I guess Bortles is pretty hot right now, but someone middle of the line, not waiver fodder, but not someone you normally start. And then also on their roster, they've got Big Ben Roethlisberger going up against that Denver D. Do you just roll with Big Ben because he's Big Ben, or do you roll with that middle of the Fitzpatrick even? Would you rather play a Fitzpatrick?
The talent versus matchup thing he was just saying. So do you side that way with quarterbacks too?
Yeah, I would put Look, if this is the game where they break down the Denver defense, Pittsburgh has enough weapons to do it through the running game, through the passing game, whatever. I wouldn't even have that second quarterback on my roster. I'd be filling up my entire bench with handcuff running backs just in case of some kind of weird injury killing me for my championship game, just looking ahead an extra week. I would roll with Roethlisberger. I know, look, you got to be afraid of the Denver defense, but I think on the flip side, the Denver defense has to be a little afraid of Ben Roethlisberger. And if he could exploit some holes and hit Martavis Bryant for a couple long passes and Antonio Brown 8 times, 120 yards, it's doable. I mean, people have done things against Denver before. So I'm going with Ben Roethlisberger, and I'm cutting the other quarterback.
All right.
That's my opinion, too. I've had a hard time convincing these guys, and obviously with the 0-touchdown week for Ben last week, it was a little discouraging, but you had the game flow with McCarron and Dalton and all that stuff. So I'm with you on starting Big Ben. But Denver's pretty good.
And so,
yeah, you can't deny that. It's just, once in a while these things happen. Oh, remember that game in Week 15 where Denver gave up 400 passing yards?
Well, and a lot of it, too, it's like I don't want to lose with Big Ben on my bench, having him perform well and having streamed Matt Stafford and said, oh, my goodness, the guy that got me here, now I'm going to roll out a matchup play and lose that way. Sometimes it's just how you can tolerate your losses.
Exactly. You save the matchup stuff for the daily games. Roethlisberger got you here in season long. You stick with Roethlisberger.
Yeah.
So thank you so much to Nando Fino. We know that he is a extremely busy man up at the Fantasy
He's got to
Sports
keep
Network.
up with Pat Mayo. That's got to be exhausting.
Impossible. Don't even. I don't even try.
So last question, Nando. Are you going head-to-head with me and Pat in Fantasy Bachelor?
Oh, yeah, man. I've been in like the last two, and I've been terrible at it. But I like it. It's so much fun.
Yeah, I was horrific in the Bachelorette, so I'm looking to regain my street cred as a Fantasy Bachelor superstar. So I'll be dishing out those hot takes.
Now, you guys are all doing a podcast together, too, right? Is that
I'm in.
a daily,
The Bachelor,
daily
I find
podcast?
It's easier than the Bachelorette. So this is my bread and butter.
So thank you to Nando. Hey, Nando, where can our listeners find you on Twitter?
Just Nando Fino. Try spelling that. Good luck. You'll find me.
Have you thought about changing the handle?
No. The fewer questions I have to answer on Sunday mornings, the
That's
happier I am.
smart. Very strategic.
You gotta work.
I like
You
it.
gotta work for that.
All right, thanks, Nando. And
Appreciate
hope to
it.
catch up with you next time.
All right, guys, take it easy. Thank you.
That was great to have Nando on the show. It's interesting that we have some different takes on our waiver guys, so it'll be great to see Nando versus the Ballers on Cameron Artis-Payne.
Well,
on
honestly, it's not even
Harris.
to me on the Harris and the Artis-Payne situation. It's like the weather report a few days before it's appropriate to tell you whether it's going to rain or not, because
Right.
we can't see the cloud patterns that are coming from Peach Cobbler and from the Jonathan Stewart foot yet. You know, those are things that it's hunches.
Yeah,
It's
and-
hunches based on information, but it's hunches because we haven't seen enough.
Information comes out all the way up till game time. So we drop our Twitter handles a lot of the times in the beginning of the show or at the end of the show. But in the playoffs, this is a good time. If you want to follow us for that, I mean, that's where sometimes we're done recording for the week.
It happened with DeMarco Murray this past week.
We're done recording. There's no other format, no other medium to be able to get it out. So we'll
We've
post
thought
something on
about door-to-door,
Patreon,
though.
or we have mailers.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah,
Patreon
hangers
and
are
Twitter.
They're expensive. To the door hangers.
Well, and there's quite a few doors to knock on.
Yeah.
And I would say DeMarco Murray, fourth string running back this morning. Fourth string. Play Darren Sproles.
What kind of what door knocking sound effect is that?
I knock with a wooden spoon. I bring my wooden spoon around. Woo! Saved that, didn't I?
I have fantasy information, and if you have a stew that needs stirring, then
correct.
I'm your man.
Multi-purpose. All right.